Sri Lanka, land of ancient temples, land of tea plantations, land of spices and biodiversity. A light mist rises over ancient ruins. A leopard silently crosses through the jungle. The sea caresses beaches of golden sand. Tea leaves dance in the mountain wind. Welcome to Sri Lanka. Welcome to a teardrop-shaped island fallen into the Indian Ocean. Known as Ceylon, this is a place where time flows to the rhythm of two monsoons, where Asian elephants stroll among tea plantations, and where the world's finest cinnamon grows wild along the coast. But let's start from the beginning. Sri Lanka stretches southeast of India, separated from the mainland only by the Palk Strait. Known as Ceylon until 1972, the name still resonates around the world today, but primarily through the leaves of its precious tea. The island is a microcosm of wonders, compressed into a relatively small space. Here, golden beaches give way to central mountains, cloaked in emerald green, while dense rainforests full of life hide the secrets of an unspoiled nature. It is in these natural sanctuaries that the Asian elephant crosses paths with the Sri Lankan leopard, both witnesses to an island that breeds biodiversity. This earthly paradise, moreover, lives to the rhythm of two monsoons, which mark time like the beats of an ancient heart. Indeed, from May to September, the southwest monsoon brings life-renewing rains to the southwestern and central regions. While from December to March, the northeast winds take over, shaping not only the landscapes, but also the very soul of the island in the northern regions. In this natural theater, Sri Lanka stands as one of the world's 36 biodiversity hotspots. And its richness manifests in every corner. From the misty peaks to the lush valleys, from the flight of tropical birds to the soft footsteps of predators, which disappear among the shadows of the forest. Along the winding central hills of the island, tea plantations stretch as far as the eye can see and are a legacy of the British colonial past, which transformed the island into the world's fourth largest producer of this precious beverage. And among these hills is also what many call the most spectacular scenic train on the planet. We're talking about the Kandy Ella line, a journey that crosses time more than space, suspended between dizzying bridges and valleys that seem to never end. Furthermore, the scent of cinnamon permeates the air along the southwestern coast, where the Ceylon variety grows, considered the finest in the world. But the land of Sri Lanka offers not only these fragrances. Indeed, from its depths emerge blue sapphires of incomparable beauty, fiery rubies and topazes that capture light like no other gem can do. Moving on, the flavors of the island are as important and ancient as its culture. In Sri Lankan kitchens, rice blends with coconut milk and spices in a mix of aromas. Curry, served with bowl-shaped hoppers and accompanied by spicy sambals, is more than a dish. It's a ritual that unites families and traditions. This land is also a place rich in history, with 8 World Heritage Sites dotting its territory, including Sacred Kandy, that guards the spiritual secrets of the island, or Sigiriya, that rises from the jungle like a rock giant. There is also Polonnaruwa, that tells medieval stories, and Anuradhapura, founded in the 5th century BC, which has watched over the destiny of this land as capital for more than 1,000 years. In this scenario, people move whose diversity reflects that of the surrounding nature. Sinhalese Buddhists and Tamil Hindus share the island with Muslim and Christian minorities, creating a cultural mixture of rare complexity and beauty. Buddhism, which arrived here in the 3rd century BC, found fertile ground, so much so that today the Temple of the Tooth of Buddha in Kandy houses one of the most venerated relics in the world. Sri Lanka, therefore, is much more than a simple island. It is an entire world, a place that continues to tell its millennia-old story to anyone who has eyes to see and heart to feel. But now let's discover the most incredible places in this nation. Sigiriya. In the heart of Sri Lanka stands a monument that defies human understanding, with its imposing presence on the surrounding plain. Archaeologists continue to wonder how, in the 5th century, King Kashyapa managed to transform this volcanic rock into an impregnable fortress and into a majestic palace. Visitors today follow the same path as the inhabitants of that time, climbing the 1,200 steps that lead to the top, through gardens that once housed fountains and pools. The rock walls preserve the frescoes of the Maidens of Sigiriya, testimonies of an art that has resisted the passage of centuries despite exposure to the elements. The remains of the royal rooms at the summit instead tell stories of intrigue and power, while the gaze is lost in the green horizon of the jungle which surrounds the site. Certainly the story of Kasyapa's patricide and his search for an unassailable refuge still resonates among these stones, connecting the present with a distant but tangible past. Pidurangala. A few steps from Sigiriya, Pidurangala offers a unique perspective on King Kasyap's fortress. This rocky massif, less frequented by tourists, houses an ancient Buddhist monastery where monks were transferred when the sovereign decided to build his palace on the nearby rock. The climb, more adventurous and wild than that of Sigiriya, requires climbing among enormous boulders to reach the top. Here, however, tourists are rewarded with an extraordinary panoramic view of the entire region, with Sigiriya emerging majestically from the plain. The reclining Buddha, carved into the rock, testifies to the sacredness of this place, which, despite the shadow of its more famous neighbor, continues to tell its story to anyone who chooses to discover it. Kandy. Spiritual heart of Sri Lanka, it's the last capital of the Sinhalese kings before British colonization. The city develops around the artificial lake created in 1807 by King Sri Wikrama Rajasinghe, with the Temple of the Tooth reflected in its waters. This sanctuary guards the most sacred relic of Buddhism on the island and depicts a tooth of Buddha protected by 7 golden caskets, one inside the other. Three times a day, monks in orange robes perform rituals for the relic, filling the air with the sound of drums and the aroma of incense, which mingles with that of floral offerings. Additionally, on Bahira Hill stands the imposing white statue of Buddha, 26 meters tall, visible from almost every corner of the city, which silently watches over the valley below and offers tourists who reach its base an incredible panorama of the entire city. In the botanical gardens of Peradeniya, instead, a few kilometers from the center, plants from every corner of the British Empire grow, witnesses to the meeting between different cultures which shaped the identity of Kandy. Yala National Park. Land meets ocean in this park, which houses one of the highest leopard sighting rates in the world. The territory transforms, passing from areas of dense vegetation to open spaces, where animals gather around rare pools of water during the dry season. Safari trips at dawn allow observing wildlife in its natural rhythm, when predators conclude their nocturnal hunt and herbivores begin their day. Usually, elephants move in herds through the bushland, communicating with each other through sounds almost imperceptible to the human ear. Sea turtles instead lay their eggs on deserted beaches, perpetuating an ancient life cycle. And then there are crocodiles resting motionless along waterways, blending in with logs until the moment to spring with surprising speed to grab prey. The biodiversity of Yala tells the importance of conservation in a world where natural habitats decrease day by day. Ella. Among the hills of Sri Lanka's central province, there is a village transformed by the passage of the British Railway, built to transport tea from plantations to ports. The Nine Arches Bridge represents the culmination of colonial engineering, being a viaduct of 9 brick and cement arches, built without the use of steel during World War I. Trains cross the bridge twice a day, and while the carriages slowly proceed on the tracks, tourists position themselves along the sides to capture the moment, just before continuing the journey toward Ravana Falls, or undertaking the climb toward Little Adams Peak. Moreover, the landscape is characterized by verdant hills and tea plantations, which extend as far as the eye can see, creating an enchanting natural scenario. Usually there is a morning mist that envelops the valley, but gradually dissolves, revealing an area of this nation where the railway continues to connect people and places, as it has done for over a century. Arugam Bay. The eastern coast of Sri Lanka hosts this arc of sand, where the ocean creates waves that attract surfers from every continent. The rhythm of the bay changes with the seasons, transforming from a quiet refuge to a vibrant center, when the wind direction brings ideal conditions for riding the waves. The offshore waters offer occasional sightings of dolphins, and in fortunate periods, even whales migrating along these coasts. While a short distance away, in Kumana National Park, elephants cross lagoons and wooded areas, creating a fascinating contrast between the marine environment of the bay and the surrounding terrestrial ecosystem. Moreover, local communities have developed a symbiotic relationship with this environment, preserving traditions that adapt to the rhythm of the seasons and to the resources that the ocean offers. Galle. The waves of the Indian Ocean break against the centuries-old walls of the citadel, built by Portuguese colonizers and perfected by the Dutch. The stone streets recall the stories of merchants, explorers, and inhabitants who have shaped the culture of this place. And then there is the lighthouse, which rises over the sea, still guiding vessels toward the harbor. The inhabitants move among buildings that mix European and Asian architectural styles, creating a unique urban landscape on the island, while the fort survives as a witness to past eras. Indeed, it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1988 and represents the largest European colonial complex still intact in Asia, with its mighty walls that have resisted tsunamis and wars. Anuradhapura. Anuradhapura tells a story of a civilization that flourished for over 1,000 years, creating one of the most sophisticated urban centers of antiquity when Rome was still in its beginnings. The pagodas of this ancient capital rise among the vegetation, with the Jetavanaramaya, which once stood as the third tallest structure in the world. Pilgrims here gather around the Sri Mahabodhi, the tree grown from a branch of the tree under which Buddha reached enlightenment. It was transplanted here in 288 BC and is now considered the oldest human-planted tree, of which there is historical documentation. Additionally, the vast water reservoirs built by the kings testify to the hydraulic ingenuity of this civilization, with systems that still function today after millennia. Daily life in this city flows around these historical monuments, with monks in saffron-colored robes who walk on the same paths traveled by their predecessors for generations. Unawatuna Beach. A protected cove that once hosted a rich coral reef, now unfortunately damaged by dynamite fishing, coastal erosion, and pollution. The coastal vegetation, although fragmented by urbanization, is still present in some sections, creating small corridors between terrestrial and marine ecosystems. On the hill overlooking the beach stands the white Buddhist pagoda, built in the 1990s by the Japanese Buddhist community as part of a peace project, offering a panoramic viewpoint from which to admire the entire bay. Another important factor of this place are the local currents, which transport coral larvae and other species, contributing to the maintenance of biodiversity and genetic connectivity among surrounding marine populations. Unfortunately, in recent years, both the corals and the coastal forest have been declining due to global warming, marine pollution, and unsustainable tourism development. Nuwara Eliya. The hills rise toward the sky in this land called Little England. The name wasn't given to it by chance, but for its colonial history that has left an important imprint in the tea plantations, which moreover extend as far as the eye can see. The verdant fields indeed create a natural landscape that changes shade with the movement of the sun and clouds. Here the climate gives cooler temperatures compared to the rest of the island, allowing the cultivation of vegetables and flowers that wouldn't grow elsewhere in Sri Lanka. Colonial-style houses instead dot the landscape. Finally, there is Gregory Lake, created in 1873, which offers romantic walks along its shores and the possibility to practice water activities like rowing, becoming a meeting point for residents and tourists. Dambulla. In the heart of Sri Lanka lie the Dambulla Caves, an ancient rock temple that preserves over 2,000 years of Buddhist devotion, reflected not only in its frescoed walls, but also in its impressive statues and the striking golden temple, which welcomes visitors at the foot of the hill. The monks chose this place as a refuge during an invasion from southern India, transforming 5 natural caves into sanctuaries, which today contain over 150 statues of Buddha and Hindu deities. Pilgrims and tourists walk up toward the temple entrance, passing under the gaze of the golden Buddha that watches from the outside. Inside the caves, instead, light filters weakly, illuminating frescoes that cover ceilings and walls, with scenes from Buddha's life and stories of Sinhalese kings who contributed to the expansion of the complex. The silence is interrupted only by the murmur of prayers and the occasional sound of bells, creating an atmosphere of contemplation that permeates the entire site. From here, one can also observe the plain below, with a view of Sigiriya in the distance. Mirissa Beaches. The southern coast welcomes this arc of sand, where ocean and land merge in an eternal rhythm. Blue whales swim in the marine depths not far from the shore, while fishermen rise before dawn to go fishing on traditional boats. There are also coconut palms that line the coast. These not only provide shade, but represent an entire vertical ecosystem, where insects, birds, and small mammals find refuge and nourishment. Here, dominating the landscape, is Coconut Tree Hill, a small hill covered with palms that extends toward the ocean, having become a photographic icon of Mirissa and a privileged panoramic point to admire the entire bay. Finally, another privileged panoramic point is Parrot Rock, a small rocky island a short distance from the shore, reachable on foot during low tide. Colombo. The commercial capital of Sri Lanka stands as a rapidly developing metropolis, where modern skyscrapers share urban space with colonial buildings, witnesses of the past. The waterfront, known as Galle Face Green, offers a breath of outdoor life, where families and children gather at sunset to fly kites and savor local street food. The Lotus Tower instead, with its 356 meters, dominates the skyline, with its shape inspired by the lotus flower, symbolizing the technological rebirth of the country. Another important monument is certainly the Independence Memorial Hall in the Cinnamon Gardens district, and celebrates the 1948 independence from British rule, with an architecture that blends traditional Sinhalese and modern elements. Finally, there is the port of Colombo, one of the largest in South Asia, with huge container ships unloading goods from around the world, testifying to the strategic importance of the city in the national economy. Polonnaruwa, an open-air museum, second capital of the ancient Sinhalese kingdom after the fall of Anuradhapura. Its ruins tell of the meeting between different cultures, with Hindu temples that rise next to Buddhist structures in a testimony of religious coexistence. Here we find the Galle Vihara, which presents 4 Buddha statues carved from a single block of granite, with the reclining Buddha 14 meters long that captures the gaze of visitors with its serene expression. Moreover, King Parakramabahu built here the Parakrama Samudra, a water basin so vast that locals call it the sea, demonstrating how hydraulic engineering represented the true power in this land. The audience hall, with its columns and steps decorated with elephants and lions, tells instead of a royal court, where decisions were made that shaped the destiny of the island. Today, tourists move among these ancient monuments, creating a contrast between the rhythm of modern life and the eternal calm of the stones that have witnessed centuries of human history. Kalpitiya. A peninsula that divides the Puttalam Lagoon from the Indian Ocean, creating a unique ecosystem where arid lands meet waters rich with marine life. From May to November, dolphins gather in numerous pods, jumping and playing among the waves, while from November to April, the waters welcome the majestic sperm whales and blue whales during their annual migration. The western coast is swept by winds that attract kite surfers from around the world, transforming this remote corner into a paradise for water sports lovers. Additionally, the ancient Portuguese churches testify to a colonial past that has left an imprint on the local culture, while fishermen continue their life according to ancient rhythms. At sunset, the mangrove lagoons are tinged with golden red, revealing a landscape where wild nature resists, despite the advance of tourism development. Jaffna. The historic main city of northern Sri Lanka tells the resilience of a people through layers of history that intertwine like the roots of palmyra trees, which dominate the landscape. Here, Hindu temples are witnesses to cultural traditions that persist despite centuries of external influences and changes. The brackish water of the lagoon instead creates unique conditions where inhabitants have developed agricultural techniques that transform limitations into opportunities, growing different varieties of vegetables, which now thrive in these soils. The Portuguese fort hosts chapters of colonization, while rebuilt libraries symbolize the determination of a country to preserve its cultural heritage. Moreover, there are markets pulsing with life, with products that reflect the uniqueness of this region. Hikkaduwa. A coastal strip where the coral reef comes so close to the shore that just a few steps into the water reveal tropical fish and sea turtles. Although in recent years the reef has suffered a decline due to environmental impact. The international surfer community has found its refuge here, attracted by the waves that break perfectly, transforming this fishing village into a lively global meeting point. The local market instead teems with life and colors, with stalls offering tropical fruit, local crafts, and fragrant spices, allowing visitors to immerse themselves in the authentic atmosphere of Sri Lanka while looking for souvenirs and tasting local delicacies. Furthermore, a few kilometers away, in the village of Eliya, stands the poignant Tsunami Memorial, featuring its Buddha statue, built in memory of the over 35,000 victims of the tsunami that struck in 2004, becoming a place of reflection and remembrance. Udawalawe National Park. Dawn illuminates the savanna, which extends to the horizon. Udawalawe is characterized by herds of elephants that cross the territory, following paths handed down through generations. The pachyderms move toward water basins, where life concentrates during periods of drought. Birds populate the wetlands, creating a concert of verses and calls, which marks the passing of hours. Here, buffaloes also wallow in mud pools to shield themselves from the sun and parasites. The tourist jeeps stop at a respectful distance, allowing to observe these behaviors without interfering, while the sunset light tints everything with shades that capture the essence of this ecosystem. The park indeed represents a cornerstone for the conservation of flora and fauna in a country where the balance between human development and nature becomes more fragile every day. Hiriketiya Bay. A small horseshoe-shaped bay hidden among the palms, where the ocean forms perfect waves which chase each other in concentric circles before breaking on the golden sand. Surfers of every level find their ideal space. Beginners in the calm waters near the shore, while the experts in the more challenging waves at the center of the bay. Small bars built with natural materials blend with the landscape, offering colorful smoothie bowls and artisanal coffee in the shade of coconut palms, where travelers exchange stories in a welcoming atmosphere. This bay, which remained relatively unknown until a few years ago, today represents a fragile balance between tourism development and preservation of authenticity. Sinharaja Forest Reserve. The rainforest extends as the last bastion of primordial vegetation, which once covered the entire island. Multiple layers of canopies create a vertical ecosystem where life organizes itself in interconnected levels. Water flows from mountain peaks through streams that nourish an understory, where fungi and microorganisms transform organic matter into nourishment for the next generation of trees. Endemic birds instead form mixed flocks that move through the foliage, while leopards move silently through the vegetation, being predators at the apex of the food chain. Walking in this natural sanctuary means crossing millions of years of evolution, breathing the air of a world that existed long before humans. Tangalle. The southern coast reveals this hidden corner of Sri Lanka, where semicircular bays and rocky headlands alternate, creating one of the most suggestive coastlines of the island. The warm sand alternates with vegetation and welcomes both tourists and sea inhabitants, offering shelter but also a protected environment for coastal fauna. Nearby lagoons form transition ecosystems where fresh and salt water mix, generating habitats for species that could not survive elsewhere. Also, the marine currents nourish this habitat, bringing nutrients that support the coastal food web, connecting this corner of Sri Lanka to the great oceanic systems of the planet. Negombo. A vibrant coastal city located north of Colombo. It is known as the Little Rome of Sri Lanka due to the strong Catholic presence, evidenced by the numerous colonial churches that dot the urban landscape. Furthermore, its identity is deeply connected to fishing, with the characteristic fish market offering an authentic spectacle at dawn when fishermen return with their traditional outrigger canoes loaded with the daily catch. The Dutch canals, a legacy of the colonial period, run through the city, creating a system of waterways that once served for the transport of spices. Finally, the long golden beaches bordered by the lagoon host both tourist resorts and traditional fishing communities, creating an interesting contrast between modernity and tradition. Bentota. The Bentota River meets the Indian Ocean at this strategic point on the western coast, creating a unique microclimate where flora and fauna thrive in harmony. The golden beaches extend for kilometers, offering a perfect scenario for water sports, which have made this location a privileged destination for windsurfing and water skiing enthusiasts. Moreover, tropical gardens surround resorts built according to traditional Sri Lankan architecture, with sloping roofs and open verandas that capture sea breezes. The lagoon hidden behind the coastline, instead, hosts a surprising biodiversity, with herons and kingfishers that fly over these waters. Here grow mangroves with intricate roots and are both a barrier against erosion and a natural nursery for countless marine species. Concluding this visual journey through Sri Lanka, we have moved from the charm of its ancient temples and traditional villages to vibrant cities and breathtaking landscapes, exploring together not only places, but also curiosities that make every corner of this land unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the extraordinary beauty of this fascinating country.